I'm Ed Alexander, attorney and founder with Alexander Abramson Business Lawyers. I'm here today with my good friend George Rosen. George has been a business broker and business appraiser for the past 30 years. We've known each other for 15 of them. As you may know, we wrote the definitive guide to buying a Florida restaurant together. And we're going to talk about alcohol. And specifically liquor licenses, and in the context of a restaurant. So George, tell me, what are the types of liquor licenses?
There's three broad categories. There's the 2-cop, which is for just beer and wine service, and that's not very restricted. Just about anybody can get that. There's a 4-cop if you want to be a straight bar, and that's called a quota license. Each county has a limited number of how many 4-cop quota licenses are allowed, and it's per 7,500 people in population. That's how many liquor licenses are going to exist in that county. Then we have the special restaurant exception, what we used to call it. Now it's called a special food service license, and that's where your national chains can operate and sell full liquor, but not have to go out and buy or win in a lottery that very expensive and valuable limited 4-cop quota license.
So focusing on the restaurant component of this, right? What are the differences between the SFS and the quota licenses?
The SFS license, Special Food Service Restaurant, is going to have a minimum of 150 seats, have a minimum, and this is the state requirement, and municipalities can get more restrictive on it, a minimum of 2,500 square feet, and you're going to have to carry 51% food to alcohol sales ratio. Now you can get into the downtown corridor, and there's a special carve out for downtown core restaurants that they can get by on 1,800 square feet, only have 80 seats, but they still have to carry that 51% food to alcohol ratio.
And that's for Orlando and Orange County. Does that apply in other municipalities?
Not that I'm aware of.
So the municipalities can make changes to the law as long as those changes are not less restrictive than the state law. Is that right?
In this particular case, they had to go up to the state and get the House of Representatives to approve it, and then the governor had to sign off on a House bill to get that change just for downtown Orlando.
Now, liquor licenses tend to be a little bit arcane, right? And having started pretty much in the 19th century, what's the impact when I'm interested in buying a restaurant on the liquor license in that particular area?
Well, a restaurant is going to have its typical food sales as a component of its revenue mix. Mm-hmm. And that has a modest gross profit margin of about 70%. So you want to try to keep your food cost of about 30%. Now, alcohol is much less expensive to buy and resell. With spirits, liquor, you can usually get it around 18% cost to revenue. So you're going to have an 82% gross profit margin. So the more alcohol you can sell, the more money you're going to drop to the bottom line.
Excellent. So when we talk about gross profit, we're talking about revenue. We deduct from the revenue the actual cost of the good, right? Cost of goods sold, and then what's left over is the gross profit. That's what pays the other expenses and ultimately brings net bottom line to the owner as well. Exactly. So the higher the gross profit, the better. So in terms of buying the restaurant, right? I see a restaurant listing. It has a liquor license. What are some things I need to be thinking about?
Well, we're going to assume that the seller is operating according to the rules, that he's got the right type of licensure in place. We're going to negotiate in good faith a buy-sell agreement based on the seller's telling us that all these things are true and correct. When we get into due diligence, we're going to become skeptical. Now he has to prove everything, and we have to be satisfied before we actually commit our good faith deposit and go forward with a purchase and wind out realizing after the fact that we didn't get what we bargained for.
So we're in due diligence. What are some things I want to look at?
If we've got the SFS license and we're only allowed to sell alcohol as long as we maintain that 51% food to alcohol ratio, I'm going to go into the point of sale system and I want to verify that everything that is being reported as alcohol sales is truly alcohol sales. And I have seen it in the past that people can spoof that system in order to put one over on the Alcohol Beverage Tobacco Board, which can come in under the new owner and take away that license if it's not maintaining that ratio.
So let me get this straight. I can buy the restaurant, I can continue the way that the seller was going on, and if it's out of compliance, I can lose my liquor license at that point in time.
Absolutely.
And so obviously that adjusts the entire value of the business, and now I've overpaid for the business, right?
If you were doing 49% of your sales in alcohol and all of a sudden you're not allowed to sell alcohol, you're out of
It's
business.
a bad day. And if the owner was lying and doing more than 49% of sales, then obviously it'd be even worse. So you've seen the point of sale system be kind of jury rigged so that it's not accurately reporting. What other things have you seen that we would maybe take a look at and kind of scratch our heads?
With the SFS license, we also have the number of seats. And just because a seat is sitting there doesn't mean the owner's paid impact fees and is allowed to have that seat on the floor in the restaurant. So we want to go back and verify that the impact fees are vested in that location. And sometimes if it's a leased location, we can get the landlord to transfer fees over to it if we're short, or we have to cart back some of that purchase price we negotiated with the seller to make sure that after the fact, any regulation authority doesn't come in and hit us for that impact fee if we want to keep that seat. And if you want to maintain your license, you need those seats.
Obviously, yeah, that's critical stuff. All right, so when the purchase goes through, right, do I automatically transfer the license? Is it instantaneous? What has to happen?
It's a process that it's going to be applied for with a resale. You don't have to go through zoning, but you do have to go through both alcohol, beverage, tobacco, and the Florida Restaurant Division. So they are going to come back out and re-inspect. If your restaurant has already been inspected within about the past 60 days, you may not have to go through that part of it, but you are going to have within 60 days of follow-up inspection to make sure that things are still in compliance post-sale.
What about the owner?
Well, you've got anybody who's trying to buy a restaurant that's selling alcohol. The state of Florida wants to make sure that we don't have any characters buying liquor licenses who shouldn't be.
No Gambino crime family members
Exactly.
buying liquor licenses.
So they will do the typical fingerprint and send those off to the FBI for anyone who's got even a minority ownership interest as little as 19%. The FBI is going to review their criminal background history, and felonies will stop that transaction from going forward.
Okay, so all of the owners that have a 19% or greater interest have to go through that process and have to qualify.
Correct.
So just to wrap up, what we're talking about here is anytime you're buying a restaurant that has a liquor license, there's a couple of key issues, right? We want to make sure we do adequate due diligence so that if there's a problem, we can uncover it ahead of time, and that the revenue or bottom line number that flows as a result of the alcohol sales is much greater than the food service sales. And so it really makes the liquor license even more important in the transaction.
Key.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, George. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and look for our next video. And hit that bell, by the way, so you get notification when we upload our next video. Thanks.